Rise and shine on Australia's Vision Christian Radio.
So it's your Thursday pod and it's very special. I've got Robbo with me. How are you feeling, Robbo?
I feel good. It's been a weird morning, hasn't it? Because here we are at the end of the show and it's kind of like we've had, 2 different days.
I feel like it's gone for a lot. I feel like we've lived a couple of days.
It's been bizarre.
You're unflappable though.
Thank you. If you missed the show, you wouldn't know that we actually were locked out of the studio. So we arrived here this morning. We couldn't we normally swipe a fob to get in. Mm-hmm. Nothing worked, so we couldn't get into the studios. No. Thankfully, we could get upstairs.
Yes.
But it was just the first probably hour and a half was manic. But it
was funny because the alarm kept going off.
Yeah, the alarm was going off. It was just nuts. Because
nothing was really
And then we were ringing everyone, like our IT guys and techs and security, and no one was answering their phones because obviously it was early.
Yeah.
And so, it was just a crazy. So that was almost a different day. And then we've been in the studio for a couple of hours with John Mackay and Josiah. So
it feels normal now. But you think back and I'm like, why am I a little bit more tired than normal? Or probably because we were running around like chickens, but we were all good in the end.
But you'll hear all that on the podcast, of course. So we actually did the first half of the show from upstairs in our Vision Central. So we sort of pulled out the outside broadcast kit and managed to quickly put that all together before the show started. And then, we were able to eventually, Phil turned up with a master key and we were good to go.
We just needed to wait for Phil. If he looked very showered. I was like, you showered, you had brekky, and then he wandered in here. Next time might, but it does make you think, do you have a plan? And in Queensland, there's a lot of talk during summer. Do you have an emergency plan? Do you have an evacuation plan?
Yes.
So I think Vision might need a plan.
There were plenty of learnings that came out of today, I can assure you. So.
There'll be a bit of a debrief, I think,
Absolutely.
After this.
So true. But anyway, thankfully we survived. It was a great morning with John Mackay. You'll enjoy all that on the podcast.
You could have him here every day.
Oh, I know.
I have more questions to ask.
We're still I just had another text pop up just then with another question. So, he's great. We could have him, as you say, very regularly. But anyway, you'll enjoy that today on the podcast. Lots of great creation questions with John Mackay.
The Rise and Shine podcast.
You're waking up with Rise and Shine, and behind the scenes, I've got Robbo with me. And look, you are probably the person I would want to be with when things don't go right. You're unflappable, which worked well this morning.
Unflappable is good, but having some solutions is also good. So just to set the scene, we're actually currently in what we call Vision Central, which is where we have our weekly staff meetings and all the Visionathon phone answers are up here. So we've come into the building today.
On time.
We were here, probably 45 minutes ago now. And the fobs that we used to get into the building weren't working. So some were working, some weren't. But the ones into the studio area are not working.
All of them
so
are not
we're
working.
Locked out of the studio. So we've managed to wrangle this so that we can at least talk to you on the radio. And we're hoping that some of our ITs and techs and
someone will wake
anybody.
up soon.
That's right.
So if you're out there and you're one of our guys, we do need your help.
If you're listening, please call us and help us get into the studio. So for now, it'll be a little bit makeshift. We've set up the outside broadcast kit and we're inside broadcasting and we'll hopefully be in the studio able to take your calls real soon here on Vision.
The Rise and Shine podcast.
We were just saying we've been locked out.
That's right.
Does this happen to you regularly, Robbo?
This has never happened to me before. So this is one of the downsides of technology because, we use these fobs to get around the building.
Yeah.
So you swipe the fob, walk through the door, everyone's happy. But when you swipe the fob and nothing happens, it's like, what do you do next?
What happens when technology fails? So behind the scenes, we have been scrambling through people's desks. So apologies to people.
That's right. Yeah.
To try and find a key. We're sure there must be a key somewhere.
There has to be a key. So we did find a couple of keys. But unfortunately, they weren't at the security level of getting into the studios.
But it was quite exciting, that process. I don't know if you are at home and you've got a bunch of keys. You're not sure what they open.
That's it.
We did go through the process and everyone, your heart goes, maybe this one. No, not.
And then eventually we found one that actually went into the hole, but it wouldn't turn the knob. So it is interesting times here. We're hoping that we'll have someone from IT or security or someone that'll be able to help us soon get into the studio. But for now, we are in Vision Central broadcasting live from the Visionathon tally room and
But without the Visionathon tally. So we can.
No, that's right. Actually, no, I can actually pull it up here. Let me just quickly.
So we've got Robbo's computer. Going? So we have whatever Robbo's got.
Look at that. We can tell you the tally. Okay. So in fact, it's actually jumped a lot since yesterday because I think yesterday was about $420,000 gap from memory as we wrapped up. But look at that, it's changed quite a bit.
It is. We're now at 76% of our total target. So our gap is closing. It's about 400,000 now, Robbo, which is fantastic.
It is.
Thanks to 3,445 Vision family members. Isn't that wonderful? Like, I always think it's like a group hug when everyone gets involved. And that's a huge group.
That's a big group hug going on right there. And even, we do give the first-timers a special hug.
Yes.
And there's 398 first-timers now, so just a couple more to go to get to a 400 huge group hug with all the first-timers. So, look, thank you to everyone that has been playing their part. And we're just so thankful to see that gap continue to shrink. As you said, 76% of that goal has been met. And we're believing that that'll continue to come in the days ahead. So thank you to those people that have been giving, and we'll continue to hopefully work the solution to get into the studio. And but I'd love to hear from you. If you've had a time where you've been locked out, I'd love to hear your story.
You've got that big bunch of keys and you're not sure what they open.
That's right.
But today, I think just for the moment, text is probably the best.
That's it. So you can text us and we'll be able to read your text on this little laptop I've got here. But for the time being, you can't call. But we'd love to hear from you. If you've ever been locked out, or if you've got that bunch of keys and maybe just collect keys and think, that was from 3 houses ago, but I'll keep them anyway.
I have a bunch of them, actually.
I think everybody does, don't they? So let us know your stories. You can text us, of course, 0447 488 316. We'd love to hear from you. This is Rise and Shine, a bit of a makeshift Rise and Shine this morning.
It's the daily podcast of your favourite Aussie breakfast show, Rise and Shine. Rise and Shine.
You're on Rise and Shine with Fel and Robbo this morning, and it's looking a bit different because we've been locked out of the studio.
It's very different. We're currently in Vision Central, which is upstairs. The studios are downstairs in our building here.
Yeah.
And this is actually where, during Visionathon, we've got volunteers that come in and answer the phones and take your donations. It's also where our staff has our weekly staff meeting, which happened yesterday, so it's still all set up from that. But, yes, it's very different because we are locked out, and so we're talking about being locked out this morning. And, I guess we're keen to get your calls. Now, we can't actually take your calls right now, obviously, because we are doing basically a live broadcast, piecing this together by remote control. But we can take a text, and we will talk to you. I mean, obviously, we will get in eventually.
Eventually someone will find a key for us.
That's right. Hopefully we'll be able to get in. I mean, we've got the Bible story sound off to do shortly, so hopefully we can get in and
by then.
get to that.
Otherwise,
but anyway,
you and I are having to do that.
That's right. We'll make the sound effects, which would be too good. But I mean, I'm curious to know about your experiences. Have you ever had a time when you had to break in or were locked out or something?
Racking my brains because it doesn't happen all that often. And I'm trying to think if we have had to send a child in through, like a small space, just climb through that window, and you hear lots of stories. Have you ever been locked out?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it has happened over the years. I know that there was a time, it was a few years ago now, because my young son was still in school.
Okay.
And for some reason he came home early from school and was obviously locked out, didn't have a key or anything. But he was very clever. So what he did was, we had in our laundry, there was a spare key, or the key for the screen door in the laundry was sort of on a hook up high.
Inside.
So it was when you were standing up, you had to reach up for it.
Okay.
So it wasn't the sort of thing.
About security. You didn't have it
That's right, yeah. So what he did, because he was too big to climb through the cat door, but he was able to poke his head in the cat door, and he found a stick somewhere in a back shed or whatever, and so he stuck his head and his arm in, got the stick, and was able to manage to flick the key off the hook. And then it fell down, and then he was able to let himself in. So that was pretty. When I found out the story, I thought, I'm pretty impressed with that effort.
Well done.
Very ingenious.
Well, I'm thinking of a time Murray was in. He was visiting. He was young, so I'm not going to throw you under the bus, Chance. No, but I think he actually broke a window to get in somewhere. at one point. He was like, "No." So
desperation.
Well done to Josh.
Yeah.
But
we haven't thought about breaking a window. We could break a. Is there a bit of glass on that door into the studio?
I don't think we're going to start breaking Vision property.
So, here we go. Dear. Look, I've just had a message from Tim.
Okay.
He has remotely disarmed the building. So I think we might be getting close to being able to get into the studios. That'd be handy.
That would be,
so the good news is that Tracy is on this top level where we are. That's where the newsroom is. She is good. She's been able to do the news all morning. So we're going to switch to her now to get the latest headlines. And then hopefully with this little message from Tim, maybe we'll be able to go down and actually finish the show in the studio.
If you do,
So
we'll have
see how
Bible
we
story
go.
sound out. Otherwise, it's us acting out the sound.
That's right. Yeah, we'll just make it up as we go. So this is Rise and Shine. Bit of a different one this morning, coming to you on this Thursday.
Thanks for streaming the Rise and Shine Daily podcast. Please subscribe to the show, rate it on your favourite podcast platform, and share the link on your socials. It all helps get the word out.
You're locked out of the studio, but our little team here of lockouts is growing because Matt Prater has joined the party upstairs waiting for the magical key.
That's right, yes.
I love the fact, Robbo, that you've MacGyvered a whole studio in Vision Central here, mate. You're the kind of guy I want to be around in a crisis.
He's so calm.
Yeah.
And we haven't used any gaffer tape, which is even, we're not at that level yet.
We were getting close to going to air and I was like, Robbo, do we need to do something to make sure? No, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Well, here we go. I'll just do a couple of things.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you're here, Matt. Normally you'd be recording and getting busy downstairs.
Yes. Got an interview I'm doing soon and thought I'd pop in. And I actually listened to the first voice break of your show and I thought, oh, that's interesting. Wonder if my key works.
Yeah.
But I don't have that security level, unfortunately.
That's right. Yeah, no, you're on the same level as us. We're all locked out. So we had Tim, who's our Chief Technology Officer.
Well, before the news
He was
people-
remotely controlled in, and he said, "Oh, yep, I've unlocked it, but there's actually no power to the door, so
It's
it
a power
doesn't."
problem.
We need Acts chapter 2.
That's right. We
Power
need
from on high.
power
That's
from
what
on
we need,
high.
yeah.
Exactly.
We never say Vision doesn't have power, but actually.
Yeah. So
And you got John Mackay coming in soon.
that's right. Yes, he's going to be here in
Yeah.
less than half an hour. So hopefully we can be in the studio by then and have a chat. But if not, he can come and join us at our little
It's
makeshift.
pretty fun. Someone will bring us coffees at some point.
That's
once
right.
People start coming.
It's like
in.
an outside broadcast.
Yep.
We've got plenty of soft drinks in the fridge there.
Yeah. If you're driving past, stop and say g'day. Come and join us.
We should actually just get the whole staff on air today
That's
with
it.
John.
Oh, why
Progressively, yeah.
Have a big party
not?
up
As
here.
people come in, you can
Yeah.
see what time everyone gets to work.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. All the truth will come out.
Yeah.
Well, this is exciting. So, look, we are, in fact, I haven't even checked because we did say to text us if you had some stories. I haven't had a chance to check that. So, we are looking for your stories. If you've been locked out,
Yep.
Yes.
or maybe where technology's failed, because really this is a technology fail, isn't it, for us
It's
this
an
morning?
electricity fail where you've relied on tech.
I got a funny story on that. We had Brad Huddleston preaching at our church a couple of
Yeah.
months ago, and he had a little USB stick with all of his PowerPoint and multimedia. And when we tried to put it in, it crashed our system.
Oh, no.
So we had to preach a whole message on technology with no PowerPoint. It was classic.
So ironic.
That's awesome. Well, Matt Prater is with us, and in fact, you've said you've got some breaking news for us.
I
So
do have
we'll
a big story. I'm
yeah,
gonna share
we'll
that
share
soon.
that in a second.
You're on Rise and Shine with Fel, and Robbo's here with me, which is good because you're good in an emergency. And I've got Matt Prater, who's I'm also glad. Look, I've got the dream team, really. No, I have never had you both on, Brekky.
Yeah.
Nice to have you here, Matt.
This
Yeah.
is unique.
Well, we should just clarify emergency for those that might have just tuned
Oh,
in.
sorry, it's
For
not
those
really
who
an
don't know,
emergency.
the studio's downstairs. We can't get into there.
That's it. We're
So
locked
we're
out.
upstairs in Vision Central with a MacGyvered up outside broadcast unit. Robbo, well done, mate. I'm so impressed.
So it's like an indoor broadcast today. So we're
Which is more
broadcasting
comfortable.
from
Yeah.
Vision
It's a bit
Central.
rainy
That's
here,
right.
so-
Yeah, we
Yeah.
don't get wet.
So I thought I'd share some breaking news. For those who hadn't heard, the well-known pastor and author Tony Campolo passed away yesterday.
Oh.
Now, he's been in Australia many times preaching at Youth Alive events, World Vision events. I've interviewed him once. An amazing storyteller, very funny, very passionate, very strong sense of social justice. So I've been seeing all my pastor mates on Facebook posting how much he impacted them, So did you guys ever see him?
I've seen him on video. I
Yeah.
never saw him live, but I've certainly heard him speak. He's quite a prolific speaker, isn't he, for many, many years?
Yeah, so a lot of people were impacted by his visits, and I thought I'd share a quick story.
Yes.
So this is one of my favourite preaching stories. So he tells the story that he was preaching in Hawaii, and at 2 a.m. he couldn't sleep. He was jet lagged,
Yep.
so he went to this coffee shop, and he noticed a bunch of ladies of the night having coffee there. And quite sadly, one lady said, "It's my birthday tomorrow." And she said, "I've never, ever had a birthday party," because she'd had a bit of a rough life.
Yeah.
And he just thought about it, and they all left. Then he said to the coffee shop owner, he said, "Do they come in every night?" He said, "Yep, same time every night." He said, "Tomorrow night, we're going to throw that lady a birthday." So what he did is he decorated the place. He threw a big birthday party, and when she came in and they went, "Happy birthday," and she was crying, and she ended up saying something like, "I can't believe this. What are you, some kind of weirdo? Why are you doing this for me?" And he said, "I'm actually a pastor." And he said, I'm from such and such a church, and I just think this is the kind of thing Jesus would do because he loves you, and he used it as a witnessing opportunity.
Beautiful.
And she said, if you are a pastor of a church that would do this kind of thing, she said, I would go to that church.
Wow.
And basically he uses that message to say, we should be the kind of church that cares for those that are outcasts, those that are not well respected in community, the last, the least, and the lost, So that's just the very shortened version. He tells the story way much better. Yeah. But I always think of that story that, you should never miss an opportunity to bless someone, to be the hands and feet of Jesus, and to care for someone. So he certainly impacted my life with stories like that.
That's amazing.
So, R.I.P. Rest in peace, Tony Campolo, a great man of God.
That's right. Yeah, well, that's big news if you've just heard that for the first time from Matt Prater this morning. But that is... Yeah, so, but I wonder what a wonderful legacy. I mean, obviously all the people that he's impacted over the years, but in particular that one lady.
Yeah, that's right.
And you just never know, where her life led after that.
That's
with
right,
that incredible encounter she had. So
yeah.
That's really cool. Well, thanks for sharing that, Matt. We've got lots going on here at Vision Central where we are at the moment. This is a bit different. Rise and shine. We can't get into the studio. We're believing that. Our master key should be turning up soon, so we can get in. And also John Mackay is going to be turning up soon.
Right, yeah, not long.
So we're believing that we'll be able to get in the studio and take your calls because, John is amazing. He just I've never heard him stumped. We just take call after call, people asking all sorts of questions, and he just has an incredible encyclopedic knowledge. So we're looking forward to all that to come and interacting with you as well this morning on Rise and Shine.
Great conversations and great friends. The Rise and Shine podcast.
Ending the morning with you in a little bit of a different way. Robbo and I here, we're upstairs in Vision Central having a live broadcast inside, which is nice.
Yeah.
But I am going to do the weather, and we've got a wonderful Vision family member from overseas to thank, Anusha from Bangalore, which is just so exciting. I love seeing people from all over the world
amazing,
even get involved and be blessed by Vision. And this is wonderful. The comment from Anusha is, the app is so useful for reading the Bible in a year and has a host of Bible teaching, etc. Thank you for making it available. So we're very thankful that you've got involved with Visionathon. So I thought we'd do the weather, Robbo, if we've got the technology working, from Bangalore. Let's have a look and see what the weather's doing. I think if I looked rightly, it's about 18 degrees now. It's going to head up to about 27 degrees during the day. It's 2 a.m. in Bangalore right now. So you might not be listening along, Anush, but we're very thankful that you got involved with Visionathon.
Well, it looks like it's going to be a very humid day in Bangalore, so get ready for that. The other thing I just want to mention is Anusha has asked for prayer. She says, please pray for my husband, who is a non-believer, and for my children and myself overcoming anxiety. So, Lord, we do pray for a blessing on that family.
Yes.
Pray that you draw them all to yourself. Yes. And thank you for the connection we have with Anusha through Vision. It's just amazing. We've had 22 people from overseas that have given during Visionathon.
Wonderful.
So she is one of those. So God bless you. And here's a great scripture for you. And in fact, it's very appropriate. Isaiah 55 says, seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. That's a great promise. Isaiah 55 verse 6. This is a bit of a different Rise and Shine. We are upstairs. We're believing to be in the studio soon because we have a master key coming to get us into the studio. But our guests are here too. So we'll introduce in a minute. We'll head downstairs and introduce John Mackay. And he's brought a friend with him as well, Josiah. So we'll get to meet them real soon here on Vision.
Brought to you by the generosity of Vision family members across Australia and around the world. The Rise and Shine podcast.
That's Natalie Lane, Since I Found You. And there's a bit of this sound going on. Phil Edwards has arrived with some keys.
Thank you, Phil.
I'm just glad I can let you in. I've got to say, though, the award for innovation goes to Robbo.
Yes.
For keeping us on air this morning. Quick thinking.
Under power, under pressure.
I know. We should start a TV show.
Never a dull moment at Vision.
right.
Power's never a problem at Vision, though, because we're connected to God, the power source.
It. Amen.
But lovely to have you, Phil, and you look showered and actually quite presentable for someone
thanks
rushed.
very much. I had time to have a bit of breakfast this
Oh,
morning.
I see.
While rushing out the door. But it's always fun, when you rely on these systems that require electricity and then something happens and you've got to go back to the old stuff, the old key.
The old key. Have you lost a key before?
Gosh, yeah, I have, yeah. But that's a story for
a whole
another
different
day.
story. You know what we do have, though, is a special guest in the studio, very, very patient with us, John Mackay, the creation guy, and Josiah as well. John, we're so excited to have you here. Sorry about all of that.
Well, I thought it was fun, really. It was like going back to early days on Vision Radio, and that's stuck in with a big plastic table. But it's good. Thank you, Robbo.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Phil. And we're all here and live. And Josiah, my young colleague, is joining us today for the first time. So give him a clap too.
Welcome. Great to have you here. So we look forward to getting to know a bit more about you. We know that you're a reptile enthusiast, and we're very grateful you didn't bring a snake with you.
We were so sure that you were going to bring us something scary.
Very tempting.
Were you? Well, we're very thankful that you didn't bring us a snake or a Spido.
Absolutely.
Robbo, you and I weren't so excited.
I was, not looking forward to having to pat a snake this morning. I've never done that before. But,
Well, I brought in a photo of a snake that lives in my storage shed, and I'm afraid Felicity nearly jumped out of a chair.
Just the photo was enough,
That's
I think.
it.
So.
Exactly. So true. Well, look, it's great to have you guys with us, and we're going to open the phone lines this morning to ask you questions of John Mackay and Josiah. So, John is just anything you want to know, John knows. I've never heard him stumped, but Josiah obviously specialising in reptiles.
Is there a topic that, like, about creation?
Oh, no, it doesn't matter.
Keys, dishwasher, how to fix something.
You name it.
Oh,
it's just
okay.
amazing. Like
Right.
John knows it all. So
Anything I don't know, I'll pass on to my young
Yeah,
colleague,
that's
because he knows everything else.
I'll do my best.
Okay, this is
Josiah
fun.
will madly Google something. So anyway, look, the phone lines are open. You can call through 1800 316 316 if you have a question for John Mackay, the creation guy, and we're going to enjoy some time with him this morning, and we'll get a bit of show and tell real soon as well here on Vision.
Subscribe and listen to the Rise and Shine podcast in the free Vision app. It's easy and available everywhere.
You're on Rise and Shine, and we're pretty excited because two things. One, we're in a studio that is proper and working.
Took us a while.
But secondly, John, it's so wonderful to have you here. And I love that Josiah's here as well. And you've got something to show and tell us.
We do indeed, Felicity. And in fact, I'll hold it up. It looks pretty ghastly.
Oh.
But
It
this
looks like
is an
something that
experiment.
Okay.
Except that, can you see what colour it is?
Well, it looks a bit like cheese or something that's been left out.
Oh, cheese. No, that's actually clay behind there. And this is, that seaweed you wrap around sushi?
Yes.
Okay, seaweed that you wrap around sushi is that nice bright green, correct?
Yes.
Well, this was bright green when it was put in on the 30th of the 10th on 24, right?
Okay.
That's this year. In fact, that's
only not even a month ago.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Now it's turned to black coal. Let's make sure we get this on the camera close up. Now, Josiah and I, we looked up turning seaweed into coal, and they said you need temperatures of about 600 degrees. Now, I've rarely found fossil seaweed made of coal, but we made this at room temperature, sitting on clay, and in just 3 weeks.
Wow.
Right? Now, what's interesting, of course, is that we discovered ages ago that if you add clay to anything, like here's a native frangipani we took last year, and we've turned it into coal. Right? See that lovely jet black colour?
Yes.
Right. Now, I gave a paper years ago to a big coal conference in Sydney and said the thing that you find in coal is clay. So don't go looking for anything else. Clay is what's doing it. And that's been a very useful discovery because here's these are all experiments, by the way, do at Jurassic Ark. And we're putting them on display at our museum here in Acacia Ridge as well. There's the fern when you don't have clay. So let's turn it around and show everybody. Right, it's common garden fern.
Right.
Widely grown. Now, here it is after a few weeks on a piece of clay. See what colour it is?
Wow, that's incredible.
It's
That
turned
is
into a
incredible.
fossil, a real fossil. So the point we're making is very simple. You actually take the fern, you sit it on clay, and you can carbonise it, make it into coal or make it into fossils.
Wow.
No trouble at all. You don't need time. You need the right process. I think we've said that before, Robbo, haven't
I've
we?
heard that a few times.
Yeah, that's right. So God, who knew everything, didn't need millions of years to make the planet. 6 days was more than enough. Just like Jesus didn't need a brewery to make water into wine. He just spoke and it was, right? So it's not time, it's the process. And Jesus knows all the right angles on just about everything, so you can trust him even in your life. Not just for clay or coal, but even in your life.
That's amazing. That's so good. Well, we have been videoing this, so we'll try to get this up on Facebook as soon as possible to see the process that John's talking about, because it is fascinating to think that, I guess you're just sort of rethinking what, the man's wisdom, if you like, that, these things need millions of years to come about. So that's brilliant. We'll, as mentioned, we'll put some photos and videos out onto our social media this morning. So just go to facebook.com/Rise and Shine Vision, and you'll be able to see that, and we'll keep...
and Robbo, one more thing, they can see all the research on creationresearch.net. Click research.
Excellent. creationresearch.net. We'll remind you that a few times this morning as well. But if you've got a question for John Mackay, we'd love to hear from you. Give us a call, 1-800-316-316.
You found the podcast of Vision's breakfast show, Rise and Shine. Rise and Shine.
You're on Rise and Shine with Fel and Robbo, and we are a bit excited, aren't we, Robbo?
We are. We're excited that we're actually in the studio, which has been a bit of an adventure this morning. If you weren't listening earlier, we were locked out of the studio with a bit of a technology fail here. The power to the fobs was not working, and so we couldn't come into the studio. But anyway, we're here now, and we've got our friends with us as well, which is fantastic. John Mackay, the creation guy, is here, and our phone lines are open to take your call. And also, he's brought a friend, Josiah, who's a bit of a reptile enthusiast. So if you've got a question about snakes, we might see if Josiah can answer it as well. But we've got Jacob on the phone right now from Benora Point. You got a question for John?
I do, Robbo. Back in the beginning of the Bible and before the fall, we talk about the serpent. And, of course, after the fall, the serpent was cursed and to slither. So I'm assuming the serpent or the snake had legs.
Okay, that's a reasonably good assumption. Not a problem at all. In fact, if you went to Jurassic Ark, you'd see our mural deliberately up there with Eve being tempted by a serpent with legs, which looks surprisingly like a dinosaur. In fact, I've got Josiah here. You're a snake man. Do you actually find what they call vestigial legs in snakes?
They do. So there are what appears to be the remains of legs, which are like the bones, the hind limbs that were left behind. And then you also have legless lizards and stuff.
Oh, right. Very good. In fact, I remember my oldest daughter, when she wasn't so old as she is now, but the phone was answered and she was talking on the phone, and I live out on the edge of the bush, as you know, Fel, and through the back door came a snake. And I didn't see the snake, but I saw my daughter leap to the roof with screams, right? And so the only thing I had, because the snake was coming in beside me on the kitchen floor there, I had a 5-gallon big, camp-size can of pineapple pieces. So I just dropped it, right? And that squashed the snake flatter than the snake's belly, as they say, right? But in reality, the change in my daughter was incredible, because she said, "Oh, Daddy, can we cut it open and see what's inside?"
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So the answer is yes, they do have tiny little legs, and some of them, like in the pythons, actually protrude out at the end, and they're used not for walking, but for holding on to each other when they mate.
Oh, wow.
All right? And so that's what you find. So, yes, our snakes still have legs, and Josiah, I believe there are fossil snakes with bigger legs too.
There are definitely fossils out there, and not only that, but across all different snake species, they all have different sizes and claspers on them. So, and it's not just snakes; it's also lizards. Like in the Bible, when it refers to serpent, obviously being a reptile, they were all called creeping things. That's the meaning of the word. So a lot of lizard species move in a very snake-like motion as well.
Yeah.
So it's not 100% certain.
Creepy creatures is quite an accurate description.
Yes.
That sounds very good.
Yes, so
that's amazing.
You can come and see, like Josiah's just joined our team, and he'll be taking part in our what I'm curiously calling the snake pit, where you set it up so he can give some lectures at our new museum at Acacia Ridge. So.
Wow.
Are they
That's
live
amazing.
snakes?
Oh, yeah, they're going to be live. We don't want dead ones, do we?
No.
I'm happy for dead ones.
Yeah, I'd be happy with a dead one or a fossil even.
A fossil is fine.
Hey, Jacob, thanks so much for your call, mate. Great question.
I was just going to say that Josiah might have known an old uni friend of mine who specialised in snakes, and that was Rick Shine, professor at Sydney Uni.
I've heard the name. I haven't met him, but I definitely have heard that name before.
Oh, there you go.
He used to keep snakes in his fridge at uni.
Another
Well, they have to be
wow.
preserved somehow.
That's right. Wow. Hey, thanks again, Jacob. Appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for that.
Thanks. Bye. Well, if you've got a question for John, we would love to hear it. Give us a call. The lines are now back open again. They weren't earlier, but now they are 1-800-316 316. We'd love to hear from you.
Love the Rise and Shine podcast? Tell a friend today.
We've got John Mackay, the creation guy. And John, this is the first time I've got to meet you, and it's just such a pleasure. I'm wondering, creation ministries and creation research, how did you get into it?
Many years ago, I wasn't a Christian. I say many, because you see, I'm at the other end of my career now. So praise the Lord that He's kept me all through it. And there's several things that come to mind that are the reason I got involved in this. One is an atheist dad who trained in a lawyer's office in Scotland. And when you talk to him about Christianity, this is after I became a Christian, his reason for not believing in Jesus Christ as Lord and Saviour was Darwin's evolution, and a Scottish geologist who said, well, you can put them all together and just stretch the age of the earth. Right now, he saw through that straight away and realised that if you can stretch the days of Genesis, you can get rid of them. Right, so he threw the whole lot out, kit and caboodle. Okay, so that's one aspect. The other aspect is when I was a kid, and I mean 6 years of age, my grandma, who stood up on a chair to do something on the ceiling, collapsed and had a stroke, and she was dead that day.
Oh,
right?
wow.
So I knew that life was fun, but grandma's died. Right? So there was a concept of she's disappeared. Of course, she's not coming back. And thirdly, by the time I went through state school, those of you who are younger than sort of 40 probably don't remember this, but in Australia we used to be a Christian country until one Labor politician changed the definition, and basically we are no longer considered a Christian country. But in that definition, we used to say the Lord's Prayer every morning.
Right.
Our Father whose art's in heaven, hallowed is your name. Right? That's, all the sort of, we would do that deliberately. But I sort of had a consciousness of God, and with a couple of Christian teachers, you sort of gathered that they believed in something that, seemed to be associated with church and Bible and that. Now, all of that's background. Finally, I sort of, being a good student, always did really well, get to high school, and my teacher, who was a brilliant teacher, but he basically was so evolutionist. All right, so I could see that if he was evolutionist, what rights he got to discipline me? I'm fairly rational, fairly legal like that. If evolution is true, there is no God. All right. If there is no God, you're not right and I'm not right. Nobody's right. So why are you bashing me for doing what would you think is wrong?
Okay.
So for quite a few years, I threw out the whole kit and caboodle until by the time I'm sort of really investigating this sort of stuff, I was reading a book on evolution one day because I love to believe that if man had evolved from the apes, I was just an overgrown gorilla with bigger brains, and I could do whatever I liked. There was no accountability. And being fairly smart, I managed to do that and get away with it usually. And if I got caught, I figured out not how to change my ways, but how to be smarter next time and not get caught. That's how my heart was working. Now, all of that fell apart when I picked up this book on evolution, and in it was a chapter in which he was belittling two things. One was the existence of God, and the other was the Bible. Now, I can't explain it because at that time I read that whole chapter and it just a conviction. I know that's the right word now. I wouldn't have known what it was. It was a funny feeling, right, that there's somebody else here, And so I picked up a Bible to see what it said. And not being a church person, I started at the front. In the beginning, God created.
Right.
By the way, for those of you out there, the Bible does start on Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, and I recommend you stop just reading your New Testament or Gospels only. And by the time I'd got through Genesis chapter 1, everything was very good, and I knew it wasn't because I was part of the bad, right? And then as you go through chapter 3, man sins, the whole thing falls apart, and going systematically through the Bible, I thought this is an interesting book. It seems to be written over vast periods of time, and this is without any Bible study or training or anything like that. And so I decided by the time I got through the New Testament and met Christ in John 14, right? Because it says, if you love me and obey my commandments, I will, present tense, continuing, right, make myself known to you. From that point, I said, all right, Lord, I'm yours. Now, I still didn't know a huge amount, so I made a decision which was very, very eventful. I thought, I can't follow this book from cover to cover. I'm going to make up an alpha topical index. Now, I discovered later that I'd reinvented a concordance, and I could have bought one for $5 if I really wanted to. But what an incredible amount of study. I discovered Christians should go to church. I discovered Christians should be baptised. And when I turned up at the local church, I think I frightened the pastor out of his brains. Here's a guy who's never been to church before, and look what he knows.
Wow.
He wants to be baptised, wants to join the church. And so the Lord just took it from there. And eventually, when I got out into university studies and all of that, I discovered that one of the dominant questions was, did God create? Hidden amongst the Christians.
Yeah.
The lecturers used it as a execution list to actually say, there is no God, evolution is true, you will not. And this is on the first day of my lectures. We will not be discussing such rubbish as creation and Noah's flood.
Well,
That's
I
amazing.
feel like there's another jump to the story, but I wonder, John, we might give you a second to have a drink of water.
Yep.
Listen to the music.
Well, and we want to keep the phone calls coming in too, because it's great that you've asked the question, because obviously you're getting to know
hear
John.
more.
Yeah, that's right. But we'd love you to call through with your questions for John Mackay. He's the guy that's written the concordance, so you can ask him any questions about the Bible and see if we can stump him this morning. But give us a call, 1-800-316-316, and we will hear more of John's story as well as we continue this morning with John Mackay, the creation guy, and his mate Josiah is with us as well, the reptile man. So that's all to come this morning on Rise and Shine.
Lots of laughs with lots of heart. The Rise and Shine podcast.
It could be from anywhere in the Vision Christian Media Hub. I mean, it could be from upstairs, it could be outside. But thankfully, we are inside the studio thanks to Phil Edwards with his key. So if you've been listening along, it's been quite fun.
It's been an adventurous morning, hasn't it, Phil?
But I'm ready now to do the weather from Sunbury, Victoria, with a big shout out to Wayne, who's got involved with Visionathon. And we're so thankful, Wayne, for your gift, which you gave online at vision.org.au. And left a lovely comment as well. Well, Vision is a fantastic ministry in so many facets, encouraging more people every day. It's amazing to see what God can do when so many are faithful. And that's really what this is. It's everybody around the country being faithful to give into something that's giving into their lives. So, Wayne, we're so thankful for you and getting involved in Visionathon. And the weather in Sunbury today, about 14 degrees right now, so a bit chilly for me, but heading up to 32 during the day.
Wow.
So quite a big jump
A big
coming.
warm-up, yeah.
Yeah, you'll need both winter and summer clothing, I think, in Sunbury today.
Definitely take the puffer jacket off before it gets to the maximum.
Yes.
It's been good actually just talking about the Visionathon tally. We've had a few donations come through this morning and we're just a smidge over $400,000 to go now. So it's great to see only 1,003 in fact. So it'd be nice to see that go under $400,000 as the gap towards our goal of 1.75 million. But we do have a couple of guests in the studio this morning. John Mackay, the creation guy, is with us, and Josiah, his mate, who's a reptile man. He plays with snakes and
don't know how you do that, Josiah.
Not my cup of tea at all. But John, I'll get you to share a scripture with us for the start of the new hour.
Certainly will. Out of 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 10, it reads, "And the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, will himself restore you and make you strong, firm and steadfast." And right towards the end, I'll be sharing with you some of the research we've done that's been a real help to my wife who's suffering dementia and leg failure.
Yeah, that's looking forward to that coming up as well. And to your calls, you can ring through with your questions for John Mackay, the creation guy, this morning. 1-800-316-316 is the number to call.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me Vision's breakfast show is now available around the clock and on demand? Incredible! The Rise and Shine podcast. Rise and Shine.
You're on Rise and Shine, and Robbo, it's a pretty fun morning.
It's been a fun morning indeed. We've had John Mackay, the creation guy, with us for the last hour, and we're going to have him for another hour yet, so you can call through with your questions on 1-800-316-316. But I know, Fel, we started to talk before the news about John's story of how he came to faith.
Yes.
And you've been wanting to hear the rest of the story,
Well,
I know.
I have. We left you in university, and it sounded like there might be some evolution being taught, and then we didn't go any further. I want to know what happened next.
Well, evolution was all that was taught. So having finished a geology degree and decided to do 3 years of genetics, I wanted to discover how life could evolve because the geologist said it had. But if you ask the genetics professor, he said, well, you've got to ask the geologist for the evidence it have, and I honestly don't know how it could evolve. Now, he was an evolutionist, right? And I just finished geology and they told me, well, there is no fossils to show this. Now, I thought this is a stupid political stance. They've got an evolutionary story without any evidence in genetics. I did organic chemistry as well. They didn't know how life could evolve by itself anyway. So left university very dissatisfied with evolution. took up teaching at Brisbane Grammar School and discovered you're a Christian, John, you tell people about Christ, and one of the commonest questions the kid was asked, well, what about the Bible? What about Genesis? What about, where's the evidence for Noah's flood? How could you believe God took dust and made a man? And you say, well, you believe that molecules turn by themselves into man. Well, that's much more of a miracle, you know.
That takes more faith, doesn't it?
So anyway, I was leading a Christian music group at the time. You may remember, you might be old enough, Robbo, to remember coffee shop ministries and things like that. The Beatles played in Christian coffee shops, right? And we played in Christian coffee shops, but the rest of my team went to the mission field. And so I gradually moved from there into answering people's questions about creation, evolution, and said, Lord, you're going to have to show me what the answers are because I don't know. And for those of you listening, that's the way to get your answers. Get on your knees and say, Jesus, teach me, and read his word because it's all in there. So to cut a long story short, ended up sending out letters to all Christian teachers wanting to know were they interested in forming a group. One guy in particular, Ken Ham in Dalby, responded, and he and I set up a ministry here in Brisbane, originally to teachers, but eventually expanded way out. He's now in America with his Creation Museum here. We're starting one up here. But in reality, I moved into ministry, and boy, did God have a lot to teach me. And I think I've shared it before, but I'll share it again because the God of all creation is trustworthy, right? So when I wanted to start ministry here, I was speaking at the Kingswood Convention, and I was asking them, please pray God will raise up somebody to do this. And the speaker at the time, who was Harry Mitten, turned around and said, why not you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I wanted somebody else. Why not you? And then an old Chinese missionary saw me and said, haven't you read the life story of Hudson Taylor? Yes. Well, why don't you get out there and do what God wants you to do? Gulp. You know, being a Scotsman, I didn't have any money, right? And I was scared of not doing things that did have money. But anyway, having listened to her and read the life stories of George Mueller with his orphanages, all done with nothing except prayer and faith, and then the same thing with the China Inland Mission, I thought, God, you make a world, you can just turn up silver or pennies or whatever we need. And from then till now, that's what he's done. Right?
That's
so
awesome.
It's been wonderful to share with people, not just the evidence of creation, but the Creator who is Christ.
And that's great, isn't it, his faithfulness over all those years? Because, I mean, obviously, when you teamed up with Ken Ham, this would be going back into the 70s. Would that be roughly? Something
like that. I still remember it because we had a board meeting and Professor Rendell Short had become a full scripture believer through our ministry, right? And somebody said, what are we going to teach about Revelation? And he said, we don't want to get into controversial things.
Creation was
the other end of the Bible is far more controversial.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's a good laugh. So
that's brilliant. Well, it's so good to hear that God's been faithful to you over all those, I mean, let's say 50 years of creation ministry. And it's just fantastic. So if you want to find out more about John, you can check out the website, creationresearch.net. But I'd encourage you to call through with your questions. You can do that on 1-800-316-316. We'd love to hear from you today with your questions for John Mackay, the Creation Guy. That's 1-800-316-316.
I've heard of all-day breakfast on the menu, but here's a brekky show available 24/7. Thanks for streaming the Rise and Shine Daily Podcast.
Stephen Curtis Chapman, I've got Robbo dancing here in the studio. We don't always get you dancing, Robbo.
Well, I was dancing, but also thinking it's Stephen Curtis Chapman's birthday today.
Is it?
Do you know he's 62 years old?
No
Which
way.
for me, I just think, don't know how, but I think, well, I'm 50, so that probably makes a bit of sense. But yeah, happy birthday to Steve. Having a birthday today,
well,
62 years old. So.
Happy, we'd sing, but I don't think he's listening.
No,
so we
not
won't.
at all.
But we are loving having some questions starting to come through. And look, you can reach us so many different ways because we're back in the world of technology here. You can send us a text or you can jump over onto Facebook. There's a post up and you can post your questions there. Or better still, give us a call on 1-800-316-316.
We love hearing from you. And Cindy's called through with a question. What's your question for John Mackay, Cindy?
So a couple of days ago, I was watching a very interesting program on telly. It was an animal documentary, and I've never seen this before. I thought I'd seen everything, but I hadn't. This dog whistles.
Oh, wow.
It lives in the rainforest. I don't know if I got the name right. It's called Creole. It hunts in dense shadows and a very dense forest, shady area. And they can't hunt properly in a pack unless they whistle because they can't see each other. And it's a very nice whistle, and they all do it. and that the shape of the dog is just like a thylacine, you know, the Tasmanian devil that died, without the stripes.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of whistling dog, John?
Yes, I have, because our new museum, we have a whole list of dogs tracing, because people take dogs with them, right? So we trace the distribution of their different racial groups around the world by following their dogs from the Middle East.
I remember seeing that when I was there last week.
That's right. Did you enjoy it, Robbo?
It was great.
Oh,
it was amazing.
So, yes, we've come across singing dogs and whistling dogs. You get a couple of examples in New Guinea, right? And surprise, surprise, they are just like dingoes, right?
Okay.
And you're quite right, they use whistles or singing. Some people just think it's all singing, right? And if you've got particularly an Alsatian type dog, they are really good at talking to you and singing and all sorts of things.
Like
So,
what sort of singing?
oh yeah, they
Like
will
a la la
sing.
la.
Oh, yeah, well, they will do that. You can go to the web and look up singing dogs or
Really?
whistling dogs, and you'll come across many of them.
I've seen an actual talking dog on the old episodes of Dr. Harry years ago. It was on recently
That's
again.
right, that's right.
This guy was telling his dog to say sausages, so he'd get the dog to do a low growl in his voice, just a little hum, and he'd wiggle the bottom of his jaw up and down. The dog would actually speak sausages, and he would actually say the lady's name, Gladys.
Yeah.
Wow.
You will find huskies are very good at this, right? So the dogs learn, if you're in the dense bush, like many of our wild dogs in Australia only live in the less than dense bush, right? You get our dingoes up on the old Fraser Island, and they will wander down to the beach looking for tourists and free food, right? Or sometimes it's the same thing. But you will find that they whistle to communicate. Even the dogs, like dingoes, are not supposed to have a bark, but they actually do bark to communicate, and it's so soft, and they talk to their children, their babies, that way too. And they discipline their children with a slightly louder one, but most people can't hear it. So there's some amazing things out there about dogs, and remember, when God made them, they were all designed so they could survive, and if they needed to whistle in the jungle, by the way, you need to go back one. In the beginning, the dogs didn't kill anything to stay alive, but they still needed to communicate where the best tasting watermelons were.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, my dogs will communicate to each other about the potatoes are ready to dig up, and they'll go out and dig up potatoes and eat them. Right. So the communication, even though it's not speech, it takes a many form of whistles and all of that. In fact, some of you may know that in World War II, they used those sort of clicking, whistling sounds as a secret code that the Japanese never broke, because many tribes have invented that as well, maybe even copying the dogs, but it works really well. You give a whistle a certain meaning, change the whistle, a different meaning.
Wow.
So all of this.
That's
so
amazing.
dogs have got this ability as well, and they would have been much better at it in the past.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Hey, well, thanks so much for your
I
call,
was
Cindy.
happily surprised to watch that last week.
Yeah.
A new thing.
That's amazing. Well, thanks for sharing that with us, and appreciate your call.
Okay, bye.
Oh, well, I feel like my dog needs to do better. He's not doing any of that.
right.
So, JJ, if you're listening,
Yes.
I'm going to go home and teach you to talk.
Got to start whistling and talking next time. Hey, thanks for the call, Cindy. But you can call through as well on 1-800-316-316, or you can send us a text this morning. We've had a few texts coming through. And here's one, John will ask, there's no name with this, but they're saying, what book do you recommend for these types of questions? A cohesive creation story that overlaps and addresses science as you go. I know you guys have got some great resources.
Yeah, we certainly do. The ones that immediately come to mind are our book on Genesis, Walking Through Genesis with Jesus, right? If you want the biblical framework, that's the first part of a series. And the other one that comes to mind is Q&A, right? That's just simply all questions and answers, right? And they are both available from Creation Research. But you'll find if you can't afford to buy books, pay the postage, which is getting more and more, then you can actually go to the website, creationresearch.net, click on Fact File, right, or click on Q&A. They are both enormous resources, and they won't cost you anything except a bit of time putting your question in and seeing what pops up.
Fantastic.
Yes.
All right, we'll check it out. So creationresearch.net, you can do the free option there, or click shop, and you'll be able to see some of those great resources that are available from John and the team. But we'd love to hear from you this morning. Give us a call, 1-800-316-316.
Morning, Andrew. How you doing?
Good morning, Phil. Well, thank you yourself.
Yeah, good.
I just heard the tail end of the dog discussion that we had as I come back into the truck. In South Africa or Southern Africa, you have the African wild dog, also called the painted dog, They run in packs of around about 30 up to 40 sometimes. They don't have a bark, but they've got a chatter, so they run around going communicating with each other, and then they'll hunt down something, and of course they just rip it to pieces.
Yeah, that's certainly true. But again, you've got to put it in context. That's what they do now. In the beginning, they didn't need to do that because they were all vegetarian. And I've discovered my dogs, I grow grapes, right? And they'll go and steal the grapes. Even though people are, you shouldn't give dogs grapes. My dogs love that, right? Now, more of our refined dogs can't cope with grape seeds particularly, but the ordinary dogs actually love grapes.
Oh, there you go.
Wow.
That's fascinating.
So is it that dogs have come, because there was like obviously the dog in the Garden of Eden, and I'm guessing it's quite different to my cavoodle that I have at home.
I'm afraid so, and was a lot cheaper to feed.
That's right.
You will find that the sort of dogs, the Canaan dogs and that in the Middle East are far closer. They're dingoes, really.
I see.
And they can actually survive on vegetarian diets, but they choose to eat meat and things like that today. So, yeah.
That's fascinating, yeah. Hey, thanks for the call, Andrew. Great to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you.
You're on Rise and Shine, and we've got John Mackay, the creation guy, and Josiah here. Very thankful they didn't bring any snakes, spiders or other reptiles with them. But we have opened the phone lines, haven't we, Robbo?
That's right. You can call through with your questions for John and Josiah, 1-800-316-316. And Julie's given us a call this morning. Got a question for the guys, Julie?
I do. It's for John, and I'm just wondering, what are some of the most recent scientific discoveries that support creation?
Okay, well, I'm going to answer a couple of them, and I'll get my young colleague Josiah, who's just joining in on the ministry, and we'll see how he goes too. So when you look at the recent discoveries, there's nothing new in terms of context, but they are new in terms of how's it working. So at the university, our young worker in England, Joseph, is working on DNA and collagen in fossil bones, because the logic is, if they've been there for millions of years, they shouldn't have any of these organic molecules present. And Joe's doing his doctorate at the university on finding this stuff and reports success. And basically the implication is these bones can't be millions of years old, right?
Yeah. Because didn't someone find like blood cells in a fossil?
Yes, that's quite a while ago, but it was done independently, because I know the man who found the bones and employed the girl to actually work on them, and she couldn't believe what she'd found at first because it was stretchy tissue, which turned out to be blood type cells, hemoglobin, still there after 100 million years or so. Impossible. I mean, you dig up Dad after you buried him 10 years later and his blood is not in really good shape at all. So what you'll find is there's all those sort of chemical researchers, same as the ones we brought in for show and tell. So Robert will tell you where to go and see that later. We many years ago gave a paper on coal and oil, etc., and we made the point to the Sydney Basin Coal Conference that it's not the time, it's not the heat, it's actually the chemicals involved in clay that are converting leaves and bark into coal. Right now that we run Jurassic Ark up near Gympie, you can all come and see our experimental section going on, and we use simple clay. We take a leaf, we take a bit of bark, and it converts to coal in a very short period of time. And I know that we've had skeptics there who say, how do you know it's coal? And the answer is you burn it and it smells like coal. And people say, you can't just call that a chemical test. I said, well, let me tell you what one of the leading professors has said about that. We sent him our experiments, we sent him the results, we told him what we did, and we said, can you recommend a high-quality test for coal? He said, that's easy. You just burn it, and if it smells like coal, it's coal. Because coal has no other smell of anything like it. And those of you who are old like me, not like Josiah, who grew up pinching coal off the railway tracks to put in your home fire, you know what the smell of coal is. It's a very sort of like mentholy, nose cleaning. It's just totally unmistakable. And that's what the professor said. So all of our research on making oil, which we've just succeeded in doing, making fossils, making coal, etc., it doesn't take time. I think you know the next verse, don't you? It takes a process. Yeah. So back in the beginning, God created by process, not time. In Noah's flood, he knew that if you washed everything over the top, the clay would float around for ages and it would mix with the shell, the fossils and that. And even though it was a judgment, the making of heaps of fossil stuff would turn into a benefit that we could use in the present day world, oil, coal, etc.
Yeah.
And it didn't take long. Right, and it's a benefit today. But now that we have so many people complaining, oh, you can't burn this, it's a danger, what we're proving to the greenies who say, oh, these are all unrenewable stuff, no, we can make it in a very short period of time. It's all renewable. That's how God has designed his universe. So things like that are the most current ones, and you can go to the website and learn more about those on the research page.
Okay, so yeah, creationresearch.net. Hey, thanks for the call, Julie. Great to hear from you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for giving us a call. And you can do the same by giving us a buzz now on 1-800-316-316.
It's the all-new Rise and Shine Daily Podcast.
And we've got John Mackay, the creation guy, with us this morning, and he's brought a mate with him, Josiah, who's a reptile enthusiast. But you're actually studying at uni. So what are you studying reptiles, or what's your actual degree on?
So my actual degree is a bachelor in animal ecology, so not just reptiles, all types of animals and how they operate in the environment.
Wow.
So ecology being like making sure that they can survive. Is that what ecology is, or what's
ecology is more about how those animals function in their environment. So seeing how they interact. So like seeing how flora and fauna interact with each other and the importance of those relationships.
Okay,
that's
cool.
Wonderful. So Josiah, when you see a spider in your home, unlike me, you probably don't try and kill it. Is that right?
Well, here's the thing. I love snakes, but spiders, I would be very similar. Yes, I would try to
really?
kill
That's
there you go. There's my life.
Or at least relocated so it's not near me.
He's an arachnophobe.
Very large arachnophobe.
Really?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, well, that makes me feel so much more normal. Thank you.
That's awesome. Well, it's funny because I certainly wouldn't like spiders climbing on me, but if I see a spider in the house, I'm pretty cool with that. But if I saw a snake, I would just be out of there.
Robbo, my wife had a big tarantula fall on her face
in
bed one night.
Oh, no.
I've had to kill every spider that came anywhere near her since then.
That's a nightmare stuff.
That would be horrifying.
My neurons don't fire when I'm looking at a venomous snake. It's until a little spider comes along that my entire nervous system jolts me.
So you're snakeophilic.
Yes, that'd be the correct term.
Yeah.
Josiah, tell us though, now you're involved with, because lots of people in that industry or studying would be the exact opposite of you and not leaning in towards creation. Yes. What is it that you find so fascinating, or why this connection with creation ministry?
Well, I've been a Christian my whole life, and that went hand in hand with just my love for animals in general. Yeah. So I've always loved wildlife, always loved animals. It's always been great, and I've always just kind of understood it's God's creation. It bears witness to Him.
Yeah.
And getting into reptiles would have been when I first bought my first snake when I was 13 years old.
Oh. Wow.
And that's when I discovered, reptiles are where I want to be. Like, I love all animals, but reptiles are my spot. And in Australia, we actually are the best country when it comes to reptile diversity.
Okay.
So just in southeast Queensland alone, we have the highest concentration of snake species in terms of diversity. So if you're scared of snakes, you are literally in the worst place in the world.
Goodness.
That is not good news.
Yeah,
no,
that's right.
It's great news for me though. So I think growing up here, loving animals, loving God, it definitely was inevitable that I would end up where I am today. And I also live on rural property, so I'm around wildlife and reptiles all the time.
I read a report in the Courier Mail the other day about a little kid who was bitten by, I think it was a brown snake, and the brown snake did not inject any venom. So snakes can do that?
Snakes can choose whether or not to inject venom. So venom is in venomous snakes. It's used for eating prey.
So it's digestive?
It is. It's digestive. It's used for breaking down that prey. Obviously now snakes are using it to kill their prey. And if a snake is marked in a certain way, it's to scare off predators to know.
So in the beginning, a big egg fruit that they couldn't chew because snakes can't chew would get injected.
Yes, because the tissue is broken down by the enzymes that are in the venom. For example, cytotoxin, it breaks down tissue.
So you're starting to talk about creation and snakes. And in fact, your first big event is this Saturday, isn't it? At our new museum.
Yes, down with you, John.
So pray for Josiah and me and Craig Hawkins from Tasmania as we run an event for a church at our new museum here in Acacia Ridge.
So I'm assuming that the details for that will be on your website?
It's already full.
Oh, really?
It's
Okay.
already full. So.
Wow. Oh, we'll have to wait for the next
We'll have to
event.
keep an eye out, hey?
That's right.
So sign up for our free email newsletter and you'll get told when they are.
That's a good point. Yeah, so sign up for those and keep in the loop with the things that are happening, because it's not just in southeast Queensland. Obviously, you've got the Jurassic Ark up in Gympie. You've got the one that Craig runs in Tasmania as well, around Beauty Point, which is a fantastic museum as well with the seahorses. So,
oh, really?
All around the country, you can be involved with this. So, creationresearch.net. The place to go to find out more about that. But we'd probably have time for one more call today. If you've got a question for John Mackay or for Josiah, we'd love to hear from you. 1-800 316 316.
Brought to you by the generosity of Vision family members across Australia and around the world. The Rise and Shine podcast.
Fel and Robbo.
Taking your calls, 1-800 316 316. Anne's given us a call. What's your question for John, Anne?
People who, in the Old Testament, lived a really long time, and they didn't seem, well, at least when I read them, they didn't seem to have any problems with getting old or something. Even Moses, he just died without any complications and stuff. Was that back then or now? Because usually now we always get diseases and stuff like now in this century. Was there anything back then that they had that we didn't have, or was it just that was just a Moses?
Okay, no, this is certainly a pattern you see in the Bible, so that if you look through the history of creation, it starts very good. So if John Mackay was Adam, his genes would be very good and he wouldn't be standing up suffering from a cramp at the moment in a radio studio. And my thyroid wouldn't have busted years ago, which causes all these things. But you'll find Adam and Eve were created genetically perfect, right? Everything was very good. Now, then sin came in and God didn't say, well, you're going to get old now. He just said, you will die, right? So the world was fresh. The plants were good, the genetics of the plants were good, the genetics of the people were good, so they lasted as long as possible because God had taken them away from the tree of life. They sooner or later would have to die. Now, that's got a built-in curse and a built-in blessing, because if you don't die and you're condemned to live forever on a sinful planet, it would be hell on earth, right? So death was a blessing as well as a curse. And the Lord knew that Jesus would come sooner or later and he'd be killed to take the price of Adam's sin. But as you get up past the flood, you'll notice one thing: there's no sickness recorded where it says, Mrs. Noah got the flu for 3 weeks before they boarded the ark. And Noah needed his COVID injection. You never read of any of that. In fact, the first person who's recorded as being sick is Job. Right? He lives for 300 to 400 years still. And most of us, we really don't live much past 80, and most of us, if we do, we want to get out of here as quickly as possible. So you'll find that the gospel's becoming more and more relevant as the world degenerates. So you will have noticed, like I have, because my wife's been suffering dementia for a while and we've done a lot of study on it, there's an increasing number of people with dementia, right? And we are seeing lots of those things increase. So the world is not evolving upwards. The consequences of sin are increasing, and they're affecting our DNA and the DNA in our food and the DNA of the wildlife and the snakes even, Josiah talks about, right? So what we've got is a pattern where Moses, if you want to know why he died, look up the last chapters of two chapters of Deuteronomy, and it basically says, and Noah, he being, 130 or 120 something or other, and so he died. He didn't die because he was sick. He died for one reason. God told him to speak to the rock, and he hit it. And then he said, do I have to hit the rock? There's his sin, because he should have said, do you want God to do it again? But he didn't. He took the credit himself. So he sinned, and leaders' sin is far worse than just a follower's sin. And so he paid the penalty. He wasn't allowed to go into the promised land, but he died because of sin, just like Adam did. And we will die. I'll die because I'm a sinner, even though my soul and my spirit are saved by Jesus Christ. And I'm looking forward to that promise of a new body. No more cramps. I don't have to stand up in the radio studios when Vision goes live in heaven, right? So that's what you find. Increasing towards the present, increasing number of diseases. Dementia. You can't find a reference to it 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
It's increasing.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the call, Anne. That's great, and a great answer from John. So appreciate you being a part of the program.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, and very good news that Vision's in heaven. So there you go. You heard it first from John.
That's right, yeah. Well, we're going to hear some more from John. You just mentioned dementia there, so we'll get you to pick up on that a bit, some of the research you've been doing.
Great conversations and great friends. The Rise and Shine podcast.
And we're having a wonderful morning here at Vision. For those, if you weren't listening earlier in the show, we were locked out.
That's
so
right.
It's been quite an adventure, really.
Yeah.
But we're here in the studio and I have access now to be able to thank people from Visionathon, which we haven't given an update for the last hour or so, Robbo.
Well, that's
so
right.
maybe we could quickly do that.
It has changed. We've actually gone under $400,000 to go now. So it's been great. We've had probably $6,000 or $7,000 come in throughout the morning. So thank you to all those people that have been giving, and we're continuing to see that tally rise. We're at 77% of our way now to the 1.75 million.
And that is thanks to people like our first-time giver, a Vision family member from Lockyer, WA. That's in the Albany region. We love when people jump in for the very first time. So you get a huge radio hug from us and a huge thank you. But also your weather in Lockyer today. We can't do it for everyone, but I will do it for you. It's about 18 degrees right now, heading up to 21 degrees during the day. So a gorgeous part of the world, gorgeous weather, medium chances some showers. So you might want your brolly as you get out and about today.
Okay, well, we've been loving the questions coming through for John Mackay, the creation guy. Got a couple more texts we'll try to get to shortly. But Josiah is with John as well today. He loves his snakes. But
not the spiders, so I respect that.
No, not the spiders.
But you got a scripture you're going to share with us, Josiah. What do you got?
Yeah, so I've got Ephesians 3:20 this morning, which reads, "Now to him who is able to do exceedingly abundant above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us." So the same Lord that made the stars, moon, and heaven, He's working, living in us today.
Amen. That's a great reminder. Ephesians 3:20. Love that. It's a great memory verse.
Subscribe and listen to the Rise and Shine podcast in the free Vision app. It's easy and available everywhere.
That's Danny Goki. I got you. You're on Rise and Shine.
I reckon that's a good song for our troubles this morning.
Oh.
Fel, if we had a key, we would have been able to get into the studio.
Yes.
So we needed Danny Goki to come in and unlock it for us.
That's terrible. That's go key. So
he would have been our go-to.
Danny will go-to. Oh, no. I'm so sorry, everybody.
Yes.
I didn't stop that one in time.
Even John Mackay didn't like that one, did you?
It was a go-to joke.
Yeah, that's right. But we do have John Mackay with us. And you mentioned just before the news, we were chatting with Anne, and you talked about the fact that your wife is suffering dementia. Mm-hmm. And you've been doing a lot of research into dementia, but I guess... just looking at different foods and all sorts of stuff. Tell us a bit about what you've been finding out.
Okay, well, as soon as she began to suffer memory issues, I began looking into it, and we've developed what you'd call a 24/7 observation list, which we've summarised. And I preached on Sunday at a big church on the north side of town, and I just happened to mention this, and I was amazed at the number of people who wanted a copy of it. Right, so we are making that available, all the things we find helpful and the things that are clues as to how it happens and why it happens, and we've submitted it to professors and things like that and got a really excellent reviews. So if anybody would like that, the people who came up and said, I think I'm getting dementia, or Dad's got dementia, or Mum, and I was amazed at the response amongst the Christians. So if you'd like a copy of the first part, we'll release it in 3 parts. The first part's the easy one, but if you'd like a copy of that, just write to info@creationresearch.net, info@creationresearch.net, and that will be available. It won't be posted on the website, right? This is, if you want it, you have to ask for it. So that's info@creationresearch.net. Just ask for Dementia Part 1.
Yeah, because it's amazing the number of people these days that are connected to someone with dementia, whether it be a spouse or a family member or whatever. It's sadly becoming more prominent.
It really is.
And so I guess, having some of this understanding is going to be helpful for people like that.
Well, my first observation that I have to regretfully say they took no notice of was when I bought her a bunch of roses and she couldn't smell them. And she'd always loved my red roses, right? Kiss, kiss, kiss. But she couldn't smell them. And I thought, something's wrong, right? She's lost her smell. A little bit of hard work, that's one of the first indicators of dementia.
Wow.
Right, so we've figured out how to put the smell back and what a difference that's made. So if you like the research, it's a summary. It's not 7 years, page by page, blow by blow, but we've summarised it, and you'll find part 1 is the easiest part. You'll be blessed by it. So if you think you're heading towards dementia, and by the way, it's got a small hereditary basis, so if your granny has got it and your mum is liable to get it, it's often inherited through the women, even if it goes to the men. Far more women are suffering dementia than men.
That's interesting.
It really is, and nobody knows quite why, but there is that sex bias when it comes to dementia. So we deal with that, and some of the things we've found really, really helpful. I do have to give you a caution. In all the years that I've been studying this now, we have found a lot of people with dementia. It is increasing, right? But we have found nobody who has been cured either by doctors or by even prayer, right? We're seeing some remarkable breakthroughs on some of the sub-issues, but even that's better than nothing at the moment. So I'd encourage you, if you have dementia in the family or think you might be afflicted by that, send to info@creationresearch.net and ask for the Dementia Study Part 1.
Okay, that sounds fascinating. Thanks for sharing that, mate. Well, we do have John Mackay here for just another few minutes more, and we actually had a couple of texts. We'll quickly try to get to them in a moment.
You found the podcast of Vision's breakfast show, Rise and Shine.
It's a bit sad here because it's the end of our show, at the end of our time with John Mackay, the creation guy. I've been loving having you here, John.
It's good to meet you for the first time.
Yes, come back
Yeah, that's
again.
right. We'll definitely have to have you back. It's been too long, actually, since we've had you on Rise and Shine, but great to have you here this morning. Before you go, though, we've had a few texts coming through, and we still have a couple more to get to, so I'll quickly see if you can answer these ones in a bit of a bullet point. One is from Peter, who says, if a day is like 1,000 years for the Lord, does the timing of days in the creation story really matter?
Okay, when you go back to Genesis chapter 1, there's no doubt about it. It reads evening and morning, the first day, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day, and the easy reading of that is it's talking about light and dark, day and night, etc. When you get to Exodus 20, it says in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and He rested on the seventh. Therefore, you'll rest on the seventh. Now, if you go from Genesis to Exodus, it's easy to read Exodus, and you say, "Well, I don't have to rest for 1,000 years on the seventh
that's
day,
right?"
So that didn't make any sense. So it only makes sense if you take Genesis as ordinary days. Now, when you have a look at the basic construction of Genesis, it says on the third day, God created all the plants. Right? Now, there's no insects until the 5th day. So if you've got all these lovely plants that need to have food on them before Adam gets here or after Adam gets here, you need insects. Not 1,000 years later, not 2,000 years later, or all the plants will be dead.
Yep.
So it becomes an irrational story the minute you start to change the text. And the key issue is here, do you trust what God has said?
Yes.
Which means perhaps I'm reading Peter wrong, right? So when you look at Peter, he says to the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, 1,000 years like a day, and it moves on to talk about you need to be patient, right? So when you look at Exodus and Genesis, right? Sorry, maybe it's right. Look at Peter and then substitute something else for 1,000 years, right? And you'll see how senseless it becomes, because what it's really saying, God is outside of time.
Yeah.
So if I say to someone, green is like red and red is like green, they're colourblind. So if to the Lord a day is like 1,000 years and 1,000 years like a day, God is time blind. He's outside of time. It doesn't affect him whatsoever. The context there is what God is like, not what our world is like. Right. Our world has 6 ordinary days, and you can prove it with insects. You can prove it from Exodus. So don't insult God by saying any part of his word isn't obvious.
Yeah, that's great. And just one other quick one from Dennis. It says, John, what's your perspective on Pangea, and where would it fit in the timeline? So I'm not even familiar with what that is, but I'm sure you know.
Pangea is the fancier word for continental drift and splitting the Earth up and all of that, right? I'm really glad I was at Queensland University when we changed what we call the overall view of the continental drift. Before and after were different. Before, we had a big theory how all the mountains were pushed up from the bottom of these huge trenches, and then in the second part of my degree, all the continents have been torn apart. Now, 2 different professors, 2 totally different views, same evidence for both. Now, when you look up the theory that says, okay, South America looks like it fits into the edge of Africa, well, it does. But looks don't prove anything, right? So basically, if you look at the concept here and ask what does the Bible have to say, it says the Lord God created the earth and all the water was gathered into one place. So there was no 7 continents in Genesis chapter 1, 2, 3, or even up to Noah's flood. after Noah's flood, you have our present-day world, the one that Christopher Columbus and the others sailed around. And when they started bringing their results back, you find the first explanation, say Francis Bacon. We're back here in the 1600s, right? And he said, well, the best explanation is in Genesis. There was a continent, and then during the flood, the world cracked up and split apart. So there's nothing new about that concept, and that's the one that fits the biblical record, right? So no problem with the general concept, but here's what happened. It was originally had a Christian context, and then when evolution came along, it disappeared for a while, went down into the academic sewers, and came back up tied to millions of years. Now, the split up seems to reliably work. I've been to this side of Africa and that side of South America, where you find the fossils exactly the same. Almost pointing the same direction, right? So it looks like it's been torn apart. In terms of the biblical, what does it matter? Well, you find that God's word said there was a flood. God's word said there are now oceans and seas. It refers to oceans and seas, whereas in the beginning it refers to only one sea. Right? You can only do that if something's happened to the planet during Noah's flood.
Interesting. Oh, fantastic. Well, thanks so much to everyone that's got in touch today, whether it be on the phone or the text line. John, thanks for your time, and Josiah as well. It's been great to meet you, and we look forward to lots more in the future, finding out more and maybe meeting a snake, but I don't know whether I'm
potentially. Thank you.
We'll put that one on notice. But hey, thanks again, guys. Really appreciate you being here, and we'll be back, Fel and I, tomorrow for Rise and Shine again.
That's right, but it is our time to say goodbye and hand over to the rest of the Vision crew for the day. So, John, thank you so much for being with us.
Pleasure.
And Josiah, thank you too.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And we'll hand over to the Vision crew. Whatever you're up to, we pray it's wonderful, and we'll see you back in early, hopefully in the studio.
Yes.
That will go well tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.